Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Finweek Money Matters. Remember, this is the show that helps you manage your finances. I'm Tumisho Greater. Coming up on the show today, we take a look at why Wordpress is wooing a South African company and what's the deal with Iran now that a deal has been struck with regards to its nuclear weapons. But before we get into all of that, do remember that we welcome your comments, so email us to moneymatters@agaainst360.com. First up, the trend of the week. Cape Town-based e-commerce platform WooThemes, the parent company of WooCommerce, provides themes and plugins, among other products, to power WordPress websites and a number of online stores. Now, WordPress parent company, that's Automattic, recently acquired the platform for an amount reported to be over 368 million rand. Joining us from our Cape Town studios is Mark Forrester. He's the co-founder of WooThemes, and he's here to discuss what the deal with Automattic means for the future of WooCommerce. Mark, thanks so much for your time. Before we get into all the technical jargon that I'm pretty sure that most of us may not be familiar with, tell us, how did you get into this particular space?
Well, thanks for having me. I got into the space right after university, passionate about the more creative side of computers, and web design just seemed a good channel for a potential career for me.
Okay, so you found what you wanted to do right from the onset. Now back to the technicalities, speaking about things like plugins and themes. For the layman man, what exactly does this mean and why are they helpful for websites?
So we build themes and plugins for a platform called Wordpress. Wordpress powers around 25% of the internet, around 60 million websites. So it's a huge customer base, and themes are the cosmetic side of websites, what the visitor sees, and plugins are features for a website to add functionality to WordPress.
Okay. So now tell us the journey of the transaction. How did WooThemes create WooCommerce?
So our background was always on the more cosmetic side, the theming side of WordPress, and in 2012 we got into e-commerce. What our customers were most requesting was e-commerce functionality in our themes. That was our introduction into plugins, and we created a plugin called WooCommerce, which has really given our company hockey stick growth. And we've got around 1 million websites that are running our plugin that allows e-commerce on top of WordPress.
Mark, talking about that growth, definitely is 400% that it's been reported. And this is a period of between 2012 and 2013. Is this correct, 400%? And how did you do it?
Well, WordPress, as I said, 60 million websites. It has grown from strength to strength, and it's open source, meaning it's freely available. Our core plugin was freely available. And it's the freemium model, so we sell extensions, which are like little apps for WooCommerce, and that's how we make our money. And with that freemium model and with the success of WordPress, we've sort of latched onto that, and our growth has been testament to the growth of WordPress, really.
Can you sustain this growth? And looking at the e-commerce industry as a whole, who are your main competitors? And can we still expect to see the same digits that you were able to print out between 2012 and 2013?
Yeah, so the acquisition by Automattic of WooThemes opens a lot of doors for us, a lot more websites. We've just gone over 1 million sites using WooCommerce, and there's tens of millions of sites that we're now exposed to thanks to Automattic. And we've got new tools that we want to build. In terms of e-commerce and trends, I think we're trying to decentralize e-commerce and move it away from the marketplaces, the big giants, the Amazons, the eBays, and allow everyone to have the tools to be able to sell from home. So I believe it's very sustainable.
Mm-hmm. Just to tell us more about some of the key themes that have been coming out in the world of e-commerce before we get onto the transaction with Automattic.
Well, I think locally we're seeing some exciting things happen in e-commerce. It's still a fair way behind what's the international trends, but the Takealot investment that they've just taken means good things for distribution and logistics here in South Africa. Internationally, it's interesting to see like our big competitors go for big IPOs. Shopify recently, PayPal delinking themselves from eBay. There's a hell of a lot of money going into e-commerce internationally at the moment.
And the transaction with Automattic, why did you decide to choose them in particular?
It opens a lot of doors for us. They're the biggest partner in the WordPress space, and they can do a lot for us. They're based across 41 countries. They've got the exact same distributed workforce that we have. We're in 41 countries now with a staff of around 400. So we've got some amazing talents to now work with to build the next sort of phase of WooCommerce.
And considering that Automattic is a US-based company, will you remain a South African-based company, or how's this going to work?
That was the big attraction, that our company remains intact here in Cape Town. I'm proudly South African. I'd love to see our stories sort of shine locally and inspire tech entrepreneurs, but it is an international company. Like I said, 41 countries Automattic's in. So I'm sure elements of the company will move offshore, but we now have a proudly South African office here.
Mark, you're a success story. You were able to have this partnership with Automattic, but there are a lot of tech entrepreneurs who maybe are not so lucky. Firstly, word of advice that you can give to them, and maybe what are some of the major hurdles that you came across and you were able to get over?
I think, don't try and create something new if there's existing markets and user bases online, like WordPress. Create something that leverages that audience. Create a tool that those sort of users will find benefit from. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just help people make money online. That's what we've been doing. We're trying to provide a solution for entrepreneurs and for people to become entrepreneurs.
In terms of startup capital, I mean, this is, you're in innovation. One would think that this is quite capital intensive when it comes to being able to keep up or keep ahead of the curve. Just tell us about your funding mechanisms. How were you able to get this started?
Well, we're very proudly bootstrapped. We haven't raised a cent, and we were luckily profitable from day one. With my background in web design, the sort of work that I was doing was very similar to the products that we've built. I was charging my time for my time, and now I'm charging for products, which means sort of commoditizing a service. And if you can do that, digital products and the distribution and the wonders of the internet, you really don't need much money to start up online and to build a profitable company. These days there's a lot more competition to when we started in 2007. But just build an audience, start building an audience, a brand, and just be transparent about where you're going and adapt according to where your customers want to take you.
Mark, thanks so much for that. Best of luck with your future endeavors. It really is great to see a proudly South African company doing such great things. Thanks to Mark Forrester, he's the co-founder of WooThemes. Let's now take a look at this week's Punt of the Week. Listed property has had a phenomenal run in recent years, with a company like Resilient Property Income Fund up 60% over the past year. Joining us again from our studios in Cape Town to discuss the outlook for Resilient is Finweek contributor Moxima Gama. Moxima, 60% growth over the past year. Can we expect a listed property to still be hot property, and can they sustain this?
Hi, Demisha. Yes, I'm particularly bullish on that property fund sector. I do see a lot of at least upside within the next 5 years, and that's just because of the makeup of the companies. They tend to then, invest in, investors get their dividends, or the companies get their profits from rentals. And it looks, with at least South Africa being an emerging market, there's a lot of offices and retail centers that are now mushrooming, so it gives it a good positioning or a good defensive stock in general.
You mentioned about those retailers that are mushrooming. Of course, we are seeing a lot of offshore foreign players coming into the local space in these shopping centers. What impact is this likely to have on Resilient in future?
Well, quite a positive one. I mean, we need to be aware that South Africa has this growing middle class, and they're becoming very fashion conscious. And this is that's attractive to a lot of these offshore companies in the likes of Zara, Forever 21, Cotton On, and some of them have quite ambitious expansion plans, like Cotton On wanting to have 500 stores in the next 5 years. So they are seeing this gap which they want to fulfill, and it looks like it's quite beneficial for a lot of these property funds, specifically Resilient, that is that's whose portfolio is based on the retail sector.
And just the outlook for Resilient, the property sector as a whole, given the fact that we are in an interest rate increase cycle, as we've seen yesterday, what is the outlook for this particular company and the sector as a whole?
Well, its profits, it generates its income, it's in line with inflation. So even with interest rates, it will benefit them in terms of they'll then be able to at least hike up rent to accommodate that part of the inflation, interest rates. But on the separate part, which would be on the charting side, it just, I suppose, it broke out of a bear trend, which is known as a flag, and it's showing at least some upside above 20, or rather 93 would be any upside above that would be a good buying opportunity. And I see at least upside to at least 60% to the 150 marks. So this does have at least a long-term vision, and I'm quite happy with it. Alternatively, if it goes anything about 85, that would you'd have to abort the trade. But at this point, if it's trading anything above 93, it's a good time to actually go long with upside potential to the 150 mark.
Moxima, thanks so much, as always, giving us the insight there. That was Finweek contributor Moxima Gama telling us about Resilient property. Up next, we'll be unpacking this week's cover story. The historic nuclear deal signed between Iran and world powers last week will open up the Middle East country for trade and investment. The opportunities are massive. Now, the Economist Intelligence Unit says no market in the world has the same level of untapped potential. I'm joined by Finweek editor Jana Marais to discuss some of the implications for South Africa. Jana, thanks so much. We've been reading about this, seeing it on television, online. But what does this deal really mean for South Africa? And I'm sure we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of it a little bit later on the panel.
Yes, I think the two broad positives for South Africa, first of all, would be what it's going to mean for the oil market. I mean, Iran has got the fourth largest oil reserves in the world, and actually they were our biggest supplier of oil. So our refineries here are very much geared to use Persian Gulf oil, and we obviously had to stop all those imports in 2012 when the sanctions came into effect. So I think a lot of guys in the oil industry are quite keen to probably restart those negotiations, and you have a bargaining chip if you have you can weigh up Saudi versus Iranian oil. So they probably will look at getting some better prices. And then, of course, for consumers just generally, once they start pushing up their production again, the impact on global oil prices and then, petrol prices here. I think for South Africa, for corporate South Africa, the big opportunity is the massive business opportunities that this could potentially hold for the country.
Talking about corporate South Africa, which would you say are the companies that are best positioned for what is currently happening in this space?
Well, I think the obvious one is, of course, MTN, because they already have quite a big operation there. And they haven't pulled out, unlike Sasol, who also had a big operation there. Sasol pulled out during the sanctions, I think mainly because they really want to build this massive infrastructure program in the US. So MTN is very well geared. They have about, I think, $1.1 billion stuck in Iran that they haven't been able to repatriate because of the sanctions. So I think shareholders might look at something like an increased dividend, some of that money coming back. And I think Moody's just recently had a report out, I think this morning, saying, going forward, it's about 2 billion rand worth of dividends we can be expecting from the Iran cell operations in the future. The other company that's also been in the news is PetroSA, of course. They have a joint venture program project in Iran that's been very quiet. It's a GTL plan, they're planning to do a GTL project with the Norwegians and the Germans. But given their financial situation, I'm not sure how that's going to pan out. But certainly, if you're in any way in the oil and gas space, Iran is definitely a country you'll be looking at.
Well, you'll be staying with me later. We're going to be joined by Chris Hart, who'll be unpacking this further for us. We're taking a short break. When we come back, we'll be digging deeper into that untapped wealth in the Middle East. What could it mean for Africa? Stay with us.